chat like that. Okay. Happy Sunday. Shavua Tov, a good vach. How's everybody doing? How are we holding up? May we only hear good news. I hope everybody is healthy. I'm going to read a list now of people that we're praying for. Some of them had conditions and we were praying for them even before COVID began, but this list just got a fair bit longer, and the sort of last, I think 10 names or more are people who are suffering from COVID right now. So please respond Amen at the end of this list. We ask God, please grant a complete and speedy recovery to everybody who is ill. May they have the healing that they need. May it be soon. And in particular, we ask God that you send a healing, complete and speedy, to Yehudis bas Lenore, Babet bas Sarah, Rivka bas Yehudis, Golda bas Shendel, Chaim ben Rose, Chaya Esther bas Sarah, Devorah bas Sarah, Yosef Yitzhak ben Bracha, Charna bas Jones, Daniela bas Rina, Yoel ben Chaya, Yehudis bas Gittel, Chana bas Lubo, Ilan Chaim ben Yael, Menachem Mendel ben Bracha Frida, Shoshana Varda bas Hadassah, Benjamin ben Chana, Chana Leah bas Rachel, Kayla Daniel ben Sarah, Shiva Chana bas Yehudis, Yehoshua ben Rivka Leel, Yehoshua ben Rivka Leah, Yisraela bas Leah Matla, Rochel Leah bas Yisraela, Shimon Gugala, Raphael Nachum ben Visa Yehudis Halevi, Shimon Aron ben Adanecha, Yaakov ben Yafa, Eliezer ben Frida, David ben Shoshana, Levi Yitzhak ben Devorah, Menashe Dov ben Rasha Reva, Moshe ben Rivka, Yitzhak Dov ben Malka Brandel, Bina bas Chana, Avraham Aaron ben Yenta, and Yosef Yitzhak ben Sophia. Yosef Yitzhak ben Sophia is our Chazan, Yossi at Mayan Yisrael, who really needs our prayers right now on a ventilator. So, please God, send a healing, complete and speedy, to all the names that we've mentioned and all the names where people we're holding in our hearts. May they receive the healing they need. May it be prompt. May it be complete. And we say Amen. Whew. How are we doing? How are we holding up? Are we managing to behave like mensches? Are we treating the people in our homes with love and respect when we're hard pressed, hard up against them? Are we seeking those opportunities to call up, reach out, maybe even run an errand for people who are homebound, people who are more vulnerable, people who cannot get to the store? Let's make that effort. I think it was Rabbi Yosef Kanevsky here in Los Angeles. He said, think about the story that we're writing right now and that we will be telling months or years from now, how it went when we were in that time of the COVID virus. Will we be able to say that during the time of the COVID, that we behaved like we wanted to, that we reached out, that we were helpful, that it was a time of blessing even in the midst of that time of crisis. And we say thank you to the postal workers who are keeping it going, who are keeping those deliveries going. I mean, listen, delivery workers right now, not just U.S. Postal Service, but of course UPS, Amazon Prime, every delivery service that is still functioning. It's a lifeline for some people, and we honor you for your service. All right. Where are we holding? I will reach out, by the way, and check out questions in the comments toward the end of today's class. It should be a fairly short class. Here's where we're holding. Shabbos 24. So we're in the second tractate of the Talmud, Shabbos, on page 24. We're in chapter 2. And today we'll complete the first Mishnah with what may we light the Shabbos lamp, looking at permitted and prohibited materials for the wick of the Shabbos lamp, which included a long digression on Hanukkah. And we'll enter Mishnah number 2, which is more about the oil in the Shabbos lamp, what is permitted, what is prohibited with regard to the oil. So to finish our commentary on the first Mishnah of chapter 2, which we had this big digression on Hanukkah, we add that during Hanukkah, during the 8 days of Hanukkah, we will also add the thanks of Hanukkah, the blessing of Hanukkah. In other words, thanking God and blessing God who performed miracles for our forefathers at this time. We'll add that blessing and that thank you into the grace after meals, right? So whenever we have a meal that includes bread, we're going to be obligated to say the grace after the meal, and into the formula of the grace after the meal, we'll add the blessing, thanking God for performing miracles for our fathers at this time, at this season. And that also is done for Purim, which we just passed a few weeks ago. And likewise, and so that extra blessing in the grace after the meal gets added into the section which is the blessing for the land, thanking God for giving us a lovely, wide, and spacious land from which our food comes. And when we also add the Hanukkah blessing into the daily prayers, into the Amidah, the 3 times a day prayer, in which all Jewish men are obligated 3 times a day, and we add it into the Thanksgiving section. Likewise, we add Purim in the same place on the day of Purim. We will also add, we note here, Rosh Chodesh, right? So at the beginning of the month, there's a special addition into both the grace after meal and the 3 times a day prayer for Rosh Chodesh, the head of the month. And during Hanukkah, we will also mention Hanukkah not only in the 3 times a day Amidah, but also in the additional prayer, the Musaf Amidah. That's the additional prayer that we say on Shabbat and on Rosh Chodesh, which is analogous to, the reason we do it is because there was an additional offering in the temple on Shabbat and on Rosh Chodesh. So we have the Musaf Amidah, the additional Musaf service. And when that happens during Hanukkah, we'll mention Hanukkah during that Amidah as well. And then the final commentary on that first Mishnah, the materials prohibited and permitted for the wick of the Shabbos lamp, is that we may not use a sheep's tail as the material for the wick. We move on. In our new Mishnah, we look at what oils are permitted in the Shabbos lamp. And on the subject of oils, we're going to learn that the rabbis basically say all oils are permitted so long as the oil will burn steadily, right? If there's a problem with the oil rising through the wick, if it's going to sputter, if it's going to cause the flame to be uneven, which might lead a person to adjust the Shabbos lamp and thereby desecrate Shabbos, so then we wouldn't permit that. But there's no oil that in and of itself causes that to happen, and so all oils are permitted according to the rabbis. But Rabbi Yishmael says we don't use tar. Tar is not an oil, but we don't use tar because it will give off a foul odor. We might get a steady flame out of a Shabbos lamp with tar in it, but it would give off a foul odor, and indeed the halacha follows Rabbi Yishmael in this. Rabbi Tarfon would say we should only use olive oil. That is the most superior oil. That is what they used in the temple. It produces the steadiest and brightest light. The sages permit all oils, but acknowledge that olive oil is the best. In this Mishnah, it is also mentioned at the top of the Mishnah that we do not light a lamp with burnt oil on a festival. We don't light a lamp with burnt oil on a festival. Now, this is one of those statements that if we don't make further study, we have no idea what it means, right? So to understand what burnt oil is, we have to understand what terumah is, right? So terumah is the portion of a crop that we set aside for the priest, right? That we give to the Kohen. We give it to the left. In some cases, we give it to the Levite, and then the Levite gives to the priest. In other cases, we give directly to the priest. Those conditions changed at a certain point in history, but that's not really important here. The point is that the priest is given a portion of the tithe. It is set aside for him. Now, that portion must remain in a state of purity, right? This is when the temple is standing. This is when this really matters. And the priest's portion must remain tahor. It must be ritually pure so that the priest can eat it or consume it. However, if the terumah becomes disqualified because impurity attaches to it, it becomes tameh, it becomes ritually impure, perhaps because a creeping thing fell into it, or somehow a person was tameh by virtue of a woman being in her time of the month, or a man having an emission, or a person touched a corpse and obtained corpse tuma, the ritual impurity that comes from touching a corpse. And so somehow that impurity was transferred to the terumah, so now the priest cannot eat it. If he can't eat it, nobody else can eat it. It's disqualified terumah. It needs to be burned. It was a consecrated item that needs to be burned. But oil, which we cannot eat, and even the priest cannot eat, right? So let's say this was oil. So somebody was he creates olive oil. It's a farmer who has olive trees. He's got the orchard of olive trees. He harvests oil. He sets some aside. He gives it to the priest. So now the terumah was in the form of olive oil. It became disqualified, so the priest can't eat it, and what does he have to do with it? He has to burn it. So then the question is, well, can he burn it and use it for its light? And the answer is yes. Yes, he can. He can use it for light. And in fact, it's a mitzvah to make use of this consecrated item. Even though he can't eat it, the priest is allowed to benefit from its light. So we might think, oh, okay, great. So the priest is allowed to benefit from its light. Can we use it in the Shabbos light? Right? Can we use it in the Shabbos light? And the answer there is no. The priest cannot burn disqualified terumah as in his Shabbos lamp. Why? Two reasons are given. One is because he wants that oil to be fully consumed, because it needs to be burned, right? The oil of the disqualified terumah needs to be burned, and because he needs it to be fully burned, he might come to move the lamp just to make sure that it all gets used up. And in moving the lamp, he will violate Shabbos. In adjusting the wick or moving the lamp, he might come to extinguish or kindle something which wouldn't have been extinguished or kindled, and he would thereby violate Shabbos. That's one reason that's given. The other reason is that even if he wouldn't do that, if he became accustomed to using disqualified terumah oil, burnt oil, in his Shabbos lamp, he might come to use that same oil in the same condition for the festival lamp, meaning just like we light lights before Shabbat so that we will have light in our homes during Shabbat, likewise, we do it for a festival. Passover is coming up. It's not going to be on Shabbat, but we're going to light the festival lights right before Passover begins in the same way that we would light for Shabbos. Now, how are the laws of a festival different from Shabbat? In terms of doing prohibited labor, exactly the same, except that on the festival, we can kindle, we can light, because we can cook. You're allowed to cook food on a festival. So, what's the issue? We're saying that we wouldn't want to use this oil that needs to be burned and is permitted to be burned for a light source for a priest, but we wouldn't want to do that on Shabbat because he might come to use it on the festival. But we're saying you can actually light on the festival. So why would it be bad for this oil that's disqualified to be used as a light on the festival? And the answer is because we have a specific Torah law that we don't burn on the festival. that we don't burn consecrated items on the festival. And we actually learn that out from Passover, which is coming up so soon, less than 2 weeks. And where we learn that from is the paschal lamb, right? The Pesach lamb, the Passover lamb or the Passover goat that we eat on the eve of Passover, right? On Passover night, the first night of Passover, when we were in Egypt and we were about to leave, we were told that we would eat a roast lamb, right? That was the Paschal lamb. It would also be qualified. It's also okay to do it with a goat, and it needs to be roasted. And we actually don't do that anymore. At some point that changed because it wasn't possible for everybody to eat a roasted lamb or a roasted goat. But the original law was that it would be roasted, and it could only be roasted. And the whole idea was, and it had to be finished that night. So that's why they would take like a registration. A group of people would register to be part of a particular lamb or a particular goat on Passover. And the reason that they registered for it was because they wanted to make sure all of it got eaten. Because anything that didn't get eaten, any leftovers, would have to get burned up the next day. The Torah says they have to get burned up on the next morning. But what's interesting, do I have it here? It gets burned up the next morning. I don't have it right in front of me. But the verse which says you will burn it the next morning, the way it's put is you will burn it the next morning, on the next morning it will be burned. There's that repetition of in the morning. And because it was unnecessary to say in the morning twice in that verse in the Torah, our sages learn out from that what it means is the second morning, right? So we have our Seder on the night that Passover begins. The next day, it's still the holiday of Passover. So even though it is permitted to light a fire to cook, we actually light from an existing flame, but you can kindle a new flame from an existing flame on Passover. We can cook on Passover. Nevertheless, it is not permitted to burn the leftover consecrated item, in this case, the Paschal lamb. Instead, we burn it on the second morning. Now, this is in the Holy Land where Passover is 1 day, right? That's where this applies. Now we're used to, in the diaspora outside of Israel, that Passover is 2 days, and that came about because outside of Jerusalem and far away, they weren't sure exactly which day was the holiday because the communication wasn't good enough. And then that just became the way it's done. But today, even today in Israel, the first day of Passover is a 1-day holiday. There's several examples of that. The difference between in Israel and outside of Israel. The first day of Sukkot, it's a 1-day holiday. In Israel, outside of Israel, it's a 2-day holiday. So in Israel, the leftover Passover lamb that people didn't eat, it gets set aside. They can no longer eat it, but it doesn't get burned until the holiday is over. The second morning after, you have until that morning to burn it. So they would do it probably in the night after the holiday ended, right? So Passover begins, let's say it's going to be it's a Wednesday holiday, it would begin Tuesday night. That night everybody has a Seder together. Any meat that's left over, they would wait until Wednesday night, and they have all night Wednesday until Thursday morning to burn what's left over. So the teaching is we don't burn consecrated items on a festival. Now we go back to the case of our oil of the priest, the Terumah oil of the priest. He has a commandment to burn it because it cannot be eaten. He can benefit from the burning, so he can use it as a light source, but he can't use it on Shabbat because he might come to move the wick because he has to use up all that oil. Or alternatively, he can't use it on Shabbat because in using it on Shabbat, he might come to use it on the festival. And he cannot use it on the festival because it is prohibited to burn up a consecrated item that can no longer be eaten. And you have to burn it up, but you can't do that on the festival, which we learn out from the Passover lamb. It's a little bit long-winded. Hope you got it. Let me check my notes. Oh, and in passing, on this page 24 in Tractate Shabbos, We also note that a circumcision, a bris in Hebrew, right? A bris means covenant, but it refers to the circumcision. And so the circumcision, which must be done on the 8th day if it's medically safe to do so. So a bris which is happening on the 8th day after a Jewish boy is born overrides both Shabbos and Yom Tov. So even though the 8th day falls on a Shabbat or on a festival, the moil, the person who performs the circumcision, will come and, doing a elective surgery, as it will, making a cut, doing the other preparations for it. That's something that would violate Shabbos, some of those procedures, but we do it anyway because the mitzvah of the bris, of circumcision, overrides Shabbat and the festival if it's happening in its time on the 8th day. However, if it became unsafe to circumcise the baby boy on the 8th day, which sometimes happens, and that happened today. So to finish the law, if it becomes unsafe to circumcise on the 8th day and it gets postponed, okay, then whenever you're ready to do it, that new day that you choose for it, right, because now you have a choice. It could be the 13th day, the 20th day, the 21st day. It's no longer on the 8th day. And therefore, the circumcision no longer overrides Shabbat or Yom Tov or the festival. Now you have to pick a day that is not Shabbat or a festival. And that happened today. A big, big mazel tov to Yitzi Sharf and his beautiful family here in Los Angeles. They celebrated a bris this morning. It was not on the 8th day because there was some issues at the hospital. And so it was postponed a little bit. And the little baby boy who he actually received his name earlier on the advice of a Rebbe who happened to be visiting in town at that time. And so we wish a big mazel tov to Raphael Chaim Ben Yitzhak and his beautiful family. He should have a long and healthy life and grow up to a life of Torah and fear of heaven and chuppah, Jewish marriage, and good deeds. Masim tovim. And we all say amen and mazel tov to the family. But it's interesting that on the day that we were reading that the bris only overrides Shabbos or a holiday in its time when it happens on the 8th day, and then that does not override, then you have to wait for an appropriate weekday, the first possible, and that happened just today. So it was a nice coincidence. All right, let me just check if we have some questions here. It's nice to see everybody. Aloma, Jean Grain from Michigan, and Debbie from New Jersey. Yua from what is NL? Shalom from NL, from the Netherlands, right? So welcome Yua from the Netherlands. Eva, I suppose is the right way to pronounce it. And Yehuda from Florence, South Carolina. James from Indianapolis. Edith from New York City says amen. Timothy from Central Arizona. Oh, look at this. Farah Sahid is in from Pakistan. We're sending you big blessings, Farah. I know things are difficult in Pakistan right now. May you and your family be safe and well, and may blessings shower upon you. It's great to see you here. Farah has a congregation in Pakistan where they are learning and worshiping together according to the Noahide laws. It's a beautiful effort. Ivan is in town from Vegas, I know. Everyone is saying amen. Gordo Wolf says, thank you, AT. Thank you for being here, Gordo. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Okay, that's what I've got for us today. With God's help, we'll gather again tomorrow to look at Shabbos 25. Please, everybody, big thanks, big appreciation and acknowledgement to our postal workers and all delivery people in this difficult time. They are a lifeline. Yes, hit the love button. Hit the love button for postal workers and all delivery people. We acknowledge their service and we thank them for it. My dear friends, sending you big love from LA. All the best.